burgers. Talk about a happy meal.
Say hello to my little friend.
Look me in the eye. You're my bitch.
Villains. One of the most necessary tropes in media. After all, what is a hero without their villain? I mean, are you really sticking around The Legend of Zelda because of Link? Link? Regardless of how you may feel, most can agree that every Mario needs his Bowser, every grape needs its Wrath, and every Family Feud contestant needs their Steve Harvey.
I could never make love to someone that looked like my who.
My lovely husband!
I've always found villains to be more dynamic than heroes since there's never really any set rules for them. You're meant to love heroes, but villains, well, I mean, they're often created to have you feel a roller coaster of things. They can be anything from serious to sympathetic to dangerous, well-intentioned, and most notably, eccentric.
Nanomachine, son.
I find myself always gravitating towards the latter, with some of my favorite ne'er-do-wells bringing their most absurd A-game to the table. Case in point,
Good night.
platformers in particular are no stranger to quirky characters and even quirkier villains, but none have stuck out to me as much as a 2010 Wii game called the Core Game. And you know, it's funny because I haven't mentioned it on the channel yet, but the Wii is actually the entire reason I even started this. It's such a cool and innovative console, and it's one that I avidly collect for, along with the PS3, but we're not going to talk about that right now because I love the PS3, and there's definitely going to be videos coming about that in the future, but hold the wall, we're getting there, I promise. I'm gonna make you fall in love with it just as much as I fell in love with it. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the PS3, we're here to talk about the Wii. It's one of those consoles that has a lot of unique gimmicks that people don't really know about because a lot of the Wii's games unfortunately kind of faded into obscurity, and outside of a lot of first-party titles, people just don't really know about. I feel like there's really a lot of games that aren't talked about enough. And despite a lot of its flaws, the Core Game stands out among the rest for one sole reason: its villains.
That's right.
The trio of siblings are some of the most memorable antagonists that really stayed with me months after beating the game. They're goofy, cartoonishly dastardly, and best of all, musically inclined.
I am Hunter Bunter, the king of guns.
But why do they work so well, and what makes them such great villains in an otherwise decent game? Well, after sitting down with the game's creative director, Klaus Langeled, I'm going to analyze just that and how a game stuck in development for nearly 10 years ended up being one of the most shamefully underappreciated platformers of its era. Originally planned for the OG Xbox, development for the Core Game started all the way back in 2003. Klaus had actually been working in America before traveling back to Sweden to start his own company, Zoink Games, teaming up with Swedish dev team Unique Development Studios to get the Core Game off the ground. Production for the game had been going great. That was until Unique Development started putting its hands in one too many jars. A previous dev on the team said in a short amount of time, the company had hired around 80 more developers to run several major projects, but they were lacking one key thing. Money. Wait, shit, fuck, no, that's mine! Money. But as the saying goes, when it rains it pours, and troubles at Unique Development persisted, losing the contract with one of its big games, WRC2, while also having its publisher for the Core Game go bankrupt. In the end, UDS themselves would go under by 2004 and only salvage 2 games in total: Core Game and the infamous Futurama game that you have to make down payments on to even afford nowadays. The staffing shakeup naturally trickled down to Zoink as well.
It took away team members, but I had hired mostly a lot of people for this team, so we had to let people go and move other team members into my team, and it just became very chaotic. It was pretty tough. So I was like, I'm never gonna make games again. I was so tired of it, you know.
This left Zoink without a partner, putting the game on hiatus until finding a developer in 2006 who was willing to take on the difficult task of developing the game to be a Wii exclusive. The game has you play as a group of ragtag misfits named Pixie, Mad Boy, and Rex, who mistakenly land themselves in the Core Suit, an all-powerful mech developed by the Mad Dr. Samuelson. The gameplay of the Core Game is simple but effective, with each member of the team functioning like the Jonas Brothers, equally as important as the other. even Kevin. From sniffing for clues as a dog to pirouetting as a ballerina, the game is just as fun as the icons that came before it. And when you're not doing these things, you're swinging from platform to platform using the Wii's motion controls. And honestly, it's a great mixture of both combat and platforming. Where the gameplay and story really clicks, though, is when you meet the Krank Brothers.
Stupid! This is just so unfair, you unfair.
Hunter Bunter!
What?
While the game is strong in a lot of areas, the Krank Brothers really show how creative character designs and writing can make even the most dastardly bastards lovable. Truthfully, Zoink could have taken the lazy route and had all the brothers sound the same, but instead, they're all written and voiced completely different. And it's unfortunate, because I wasn't able to track down the people that voiced them because there's really no record of them online, and with the game being over a decade old, I mean, Klaus couldn't really recall who they were either. They speak in this goofy, over-exaggerated way that really adds to the campiness of their performances. Think of it kind of in the same realm of how dialogue's delivered in Crash Bandicoot Twinsanity. There the animated acting succeeds because it's absurd but equally witty and mature.
Hey! Yeah, you! I've been doing this for 10 stinking years. Back and forward, and I'm sick of it! But I'm not gonna do it no more!
What's it, Joe?
That guy!
Oh, no. It works for me. And rule number 1 is, employees have no names! It is an employee, ergo it is mine! So bugger off.
And despite being joined at the hip, each of the brothers are distinct from each other, harboring uniquely wacky obsessions. Dr. Und, who's obsessed with torture, Hunter Bunter, who's obsessed with weaponry, and Tick Von Tak, a production manager who wants to avoid running behind schedule more than anything. In the case of Tick Von Tak, the idea behind him was one that Klaus was all too familiar with.
I know that Tick Van Tak was really inspired by just producers in general, like schedules all the time, and Gantt schedules and trying to control a team that's totally impossible to control, and every production has these kind of scheduled characters, that just you can't get control of it, but they try to.
The design of the Kranks and the world as a whole was inspired by games like Oddworld, but most importantly, draws heavy influence from Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. In fact, Dr. Und's Zipperhead was directly inspired by Dr. Finkelstein, who's able to plop his brain out at will in the film. The only difference here is that Dr. Und's brain is actually a little mini crank that controls him. In the case of Hunter Bunter, well, he's nothing more than a psychotic little cowboy. And honestly, it's Zoink prioritizing the look of their games that's really taken Klaus such a long way and given his team so much acclaim. Almost a decade later, and here we are seeing Klaus at his creative peak with his new company Moonhood, which most recently made the very successful The Midnight Walk, where those Nightmare Before Christmas vibes really shine through. Most importantly though, the brothers are downright hysterical, the biggest aspect of the game that keeps you playing.
Oh, my baton! I feel like poisoning every single being with a deliciously painful and perfectly horrible drug!
Klaus said the humor of the core game was inspired by 90s cartoons like Cow and Chicken, comedy that's as suitable for adults as it is for children. And the influences didn't stop there. You see, Klaus happened to enjoy a little Nintendo game called Conker's Bad Fur Day, which was created for anyone but kids. It's a game that's lived on in Nintendo's Grand Palace of Infamy as one of its crassest platformers ever made. If you've played the N64 classic, then I'm sure you're aware of its most iconic boss, the Great Mighty Pooh, a giant pile of shit that, also happens to be an opera singer.
Now I'm really getting rather mad. You're like a niggly, tickly, shitty little tag nut.
And no, I'm not telling you this as a sort of segue into performing my own ballad, even though I think we'd all enjoy that. No, I'm kidding. I'm not gonna do it. No, I got you. You thought you wanted that. I know you wanted that. Klaus actually held on to that musical characteristic of the Great Mighty Pooh and used it as a key component for developing the whimsical charm of the Krank Brothers.
Mighty factories are producing all the guns I need. I run along my evasion plan. The world is mine any minute now. So I am speeding up. I am Tick Von Tak. Hey!
But Klaus didn't want to make the musical numbers seem like a gimmick, and he enlisted the help of longtime composer Andreas Polizagopoulos to make some pretty infectiously catchy tunes.
I wanna feel good forever. There has been a mighty change. Funky beats, dabba dabba dooba da da. Oh, this makes me feel so cool.
It's just one of the many charms that exude from the brothers, along with the fights against them. Each of their boss battles are designed to be fun in their own way. Their fights are easily the biggest highlights of the game and really shine a positive light on the mechanics and show you what the game is truly capable of. One of the best examples is the second fight against Hunter Bunter, where he pilots a giant mech that drops toxic gas all over the boss arena. Using the Wii's motion controls, you twirl the Wiimote to hover above the clouds as the pretty little ballerina the game wants you to be. After that, you make your way up to the cockpit and switch to Mad Boy so that you can dish out the beatdown of a lifetime. But if I had to pick my personal favorite, I'd have to go with an early fight against Hunter Bunter, since it's the only fight against a Krank where they're more or less naked. It's a unique one where as the fight goes on, Hunter Bunter keeps tricking himself out with more and more weapons, causing you to adapt and use your different abilities to pull him down and clobber him. There's a lot of great uses of our protagonist's abilities like this that I wish the game leaned into more outside of these fights. The story of the core game primarily focuses on a power balance between two factions. Obviously, you have the Krank Brothers and their subservient army that they enslaved, but you also have the resistance group called the Weeba, who, I mean, let's be honest, have a civil rights anthem that gives even Kendrick Lamar a run for his money.
Weeba, Weeba, we are the underground sisters. We fight for freedom, you by Weebas, all over and around.
The Kranks fiendishly want world domination of the outside world and work towards building an excavating machine to burrow out of their subterranean refuge. But the Weeba want to continue living in prosperity and peace underground, so with the help of Dr. Samuelson and the core suit after Pixie breaks into Samuelson's lab, the core gang make their way through different layers of the Krank's inner world, working together with the Weeba and their leader, Morfar. Shockingly enough, though, the Kranks succeed in their plan and break through the Earth's crust and invade the planet's surface. I kinda love this because it's very rare that we get to see a villain's plot be carried out in a game, so it's super cool that instead of us stopping them from doing it, we are essentially just doing damage control. This leads to arguably some of the best level designs in the game, with the team now exploring the outside world atop skyscrapers reminiscent of those in New York City. Really, it's a shame we don't get to spend more time outside because the gameplay is at its height in these sections and best shows off each character's abilities, swinging across towering buildings while you force feed knuckle sandwiches to those in need. Eventually, you make your way to the brothers' Krank tank and after reaching the top of it, have a final showdown. And unfortunately, compared to all the other fights, yeah, this is easily the worst one. Which blows, because this is the first fight that incorporates all three brothers, but in reality, I mean, you're not really even fighting them or any wacky machine they built. Instead, you're stuck fighting this odd vacuum that just burps out enemies you've encountered throughout the game, and it just really feels like a glorified enemy wave, which, again, for this being the big finale against all three Kranks, I was expecting a little bit more. Luckily, the last boss, while it is underwhelming, it's only a small blemish on an otherwise great Wii title. The Kranks end up getting put in prison and everyone else lives happily ever after. It's also kind of incredible because there's this random Bill Gates joke that they throw in during the end credits, which is even funnier when you remember the fact that the game started as an original Xbox exclusive.
The giant Krank tank was bought by Bill Gates. He said this would finally make him look cool.
Overall, the Kranks really bring out the best in villainy and prove why good baddie building can make or break a game. But unfortunately, the humor and gameplay of the core game just wasn't enough to make it a success. In reality, Klaus didn't actually make any money off of the game and used his experience with the core game to scale back his ambitions in future projects. Being Zoink's first console game ever, the target goal for copies sold was around 250,000, a number Zoink wasn't able to meet. While there's plenty of reasons games from small companies back then were susceptible to failure, Wii was especially known for only having first-party support.
The games that really sold well on the Switch, on the Wii, was the Nintendo games. There was a lot of units out there, but everybody bought, of course, Wii Sports,
Right.
Like most people just played Wii Sports.
Yeah, and you're right.
Then,
like the Switch was the first one where that wasn't the case, but I also think that's just because the indie game genre was like really exploded then, and unfortunately, by the Wii's life,
no, there wasn't even
really a thing.
There wasn't even a download shop on the Wii in the beginning.
But for the reality of the core game, it was a third-party title from a freshly new studio that didn't have a significant budget for marketing and didn't have any unique hook outside of its art style to set it apart from the numerous other platformers on the console. When you mix all of those things together, it's no wonder why it faded into obscurity, but luckily for Klaus, it wouldn't deter him from his creative endeavors moving forward. After a few years of developing mobile games, Klaus and Zoink would go back to the drawing board to release console hits like Stick It to the Man, which absolutely decimated the indie scene back in 2013, and also released Flipping Death in 2018. The games boasted a gorgeous 2D art style and unconventional sense of humor that Zoink Games would become known for. And despite its floundering success, the core game is a fun journey to see where all of their ideas would build from. And in a way, I like to think that the core game never left Klaus. Even after he left Zoink with co-director Olav Redmalm to start another company I mentioned earlier called Moonhood. Like I said before, the core game's art style took a lot of influence from the Nightmare Before Christmas film, and with Moonhood's The Midnight Walk this year, I would argue Klaus and Olav even surpassed the unorthodox beauty of Tim Burton himself. But to know it all started over 2 decades ago with an experience that would have been defeating for some, it certainly is a big indicator of why you should always chase your dreams despite the failures that can stand in your way. I mean, obviously, with Klaus designing such great villains, it's no wonder he's focused a lot of his efforts on creating unforgettable horror experiences like The Midnight Walk. So who are your favorite video game villains, and do you think that the more absurd the villain is, the better? I certainly do, but I'm simply a content peasant to your kingly viewing desires, so I want to hear from you. And if the core game seems to interest you, go ahead and play it for yourself, and definitely make sure you pick up The Midnight Walk. And of course, don't forget to give the video a wink and a nod, and go be wonderful people your grocery store manager would be proud of. Take care.